You've probably heard this advice. You should write a book to grow your business. But is this really true? And more importantly, what if you wrote the wrong book? Well, today's guest, Ally Machate, is a publishing strategist and best-selling author who's helped countless entrepreneurs and business owners and experts turn their ideas into powerful, purpose-driven books that elevate their visibility, grow their authority, and drive real business results. She's the founder of the Writer's Ally, and with over 25 years of experience in the industry, including her start at Simon Schuster, she knows what works and, more importantly, what doesn't when it comes to writing a book. So if you've been thinking about writing a book or wondering if it's even the right move for your business at this time, this episode will give you the clarity and the strategy you need. Let's dive in. Hi, I'm Derek Fredrickson. Welcome to the COO Solution Podcast, the show for business owners and visionary leaders who want to scale with clarity, confidence, and the right support. For over 16 years, I've been in the trenches as a fractional COO, Chief Operating Officer, helping entrepreneurs align their teams, streamline operations, and remove bottlenecks that slow growth. I understand the challenges, feeling overwhelmed, stretched too thin, or uncertain about how to scale without burning out. I've helped business owners move from chaos to clarity, creating businesses that run smoothly and grow and scale. Each week, I'll bring you real-world insights, proven strategies, and practical solutions to help you step into your highest role as a leader. Whether it's optimizing your team, strengthening accountability, or building the right systems for growth, this podcast is here to support you in scaling smarter. So if you're ready to create a business that thrives without requiring more of you, let's get started. Hey there, everybody. It's Derek Fredrickson here from the COO Solution Podcast, and I'm very excited to welcome our guest here for today, Ally Machate of the Writer's Ally. We are here to talk about all things books and writing a book and publishing a book and authoring a book and whether you should create a book or maybe you should not create a book. I think this is going to be a very interesting and inspiring conversation for our audience because perhaps you've thought about writing a book and you're considering if that's the next best step in your business growth plan as you're scaling your business and getting your message out there. Is something like writing a book an important part of that strategy? So we're very excited to have Ally with us for today. Ally, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, Derek. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Ally Machate of the Writer's Ally. I've been a publishing strategist and book leverage expert working in the industry for 25 years. Started off at a tiny regional publisher, moved on to the big five at Simon Schuster, where I really learned the business and sort of earned my chops, so to speak. After that, I went freelance for a little while. I was there during a very tumultuous time, and I thought it would just be a break. I was finishing up a master's degree, and I thought, well, I'll go finish that up and I'll freelance a little, and then I'll come back in a year or two when things sort of settle down in New York. This was after post 9/11 and the dot-com bust. I never went back because I loved working independently so much, and I really felt like I could help authors more directly by working with them in that way and really bring my understanding and my knowledge of the publishing industry to hopeful authors and help them really understand what they were up against and trying to do. And then, of course, we had the self-publishing revolution. We had print-on-demand technology, we had ebook technology, and all of a sudden the market really opened up and changed. And I found that it was really important that more and more authors were out there getting scammed or getting bad advice, just really getting preyed on. There's a lot of predatory companies in this self-publishing space. And I wanted people to have a group of publishing professionals with the right experience that they could trust, that they could get everything they needed in one place. And the Writer's Ally was born.
Oh, wonderful. I love that. Very good. I'm excited to dive into this because I know you and I had a preliminary conversation not too long ago. What I loved about your message is that you have this myth and you like to kind of bust up the myth, which is the myth that every entrepreneur should write a book. It's supposed to be like a rite of passage. If you're an entrepreneur or a thought leader or a business owner, you have to have a book. And you have a different approach or a different opinion. So I'd love to just kind of start there. What's your belief about the fact that most entrepreneurs believe that they do need to have a book in order to grow and scale?
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking about this. So first and foremost, the reason why everyone says that comes from something that's true, which is that with the right book, a book absolutely can be an incredible power tool for your business. It can open doors. It can bring in leads. It can establish you as a thought leader. It can do all kinds of things. People want those benefits. That's real. But no, I don't think everybody should write a book. Sometimes it's about the book not being the right tool for the job. Sometimes it's about timing. A lot of people believe that when they're very early in their business, they're told writing a book will help them to grow the business. But the reality is that if you've just started your business, you may not really have the experience, the case studies, you haven't practiced your thing, whatever it is that you're an expert in, enough to create a book that's really going to move the needle in the way that you want. So sometimes it's a book is not right now. Sometimes it's that a book is not right ever. And the real truth is that the world does not need more books. It needs better books.
I love that. That's a great point. The world needs better books, not more books. So can you explain a little bit? I think also maybe there's this misconception that possible authors believe that they are going to write a book and then they get into it and then there's just this like overwhelm of all of the things they need to think about. They kind of go into it with the best heart and mind and they start kind of pouring their message, their passion, their story. And then there's this whole other thing that needs to happen in terms of the publishing, the production, the marketing, the sales. Like, what do you think you could give as advice to a potential author to say, make sure that you're like starting with the end goal in mind? Like, what is the strategy of the book? What's the intention of the book? I know you have this belief between there are right books and then there are wrong books. Can you speak to that a little bit?
And that is one of the very important reasons why I say like that a book may not always be right, because it is such a huge investment of time and energy and resources. And a lot of people don't realize that, because what we see in pop culture and what we see in the news, right? We see the highlights. We have this vision of what it takes to publish a book. We see, okay, you wrote a book, you sent it to a publisher, they published it. Okay, now the book's out there, right? But that's like the tip of the iceberg. There's 90% of the work that goes on behind the scenes that they just don't know until they get into it. And so if that isn't something your business can accommodate right now, if that's not the best use of your time and energy and money, then that's one reason why a book may not be right for you. But to that question about right book versus wrong book, that's the other piece of that myth. Not only are people told, well, everyone has to have a book, they're also sort of told either explicitly or implicitly that it doesn't matter almost what the book is. Just the fact that you have one and that you call yourself an author, is supposed to be enough. And that's just not true. It's really not about just having any book. It's about having the right book. When I say right and wrong, it's really not even about good or bad, because a person can write a perfectly good book and it can be well written, well conceived, it can have a nice cover, they can do everything right. And if they weren't strategic in thinking about what they wanted that book to do for their business, and they didn't sort of backwards engineer the book from that place, then what they end up with is a really good book that doesn't sell because it's not marketable or because it's not tuned into whatever that goal was that they hope to achieve.
Right.
So right book, wrong book isn't about good and bad. It's about what do you want to do with the book?
Right.
And is it the right book? Are you clear on what you want the book to achieve for you in the world? Who are the people that need to find out about the book for you to get that goal achieved? And how do you reach those people? What do they want from a book? What do they need? What needs to be in the book for those people to come to you?
Yeah. It's like what you said. It's like starting with the end in mind and saying, okay, this is my goal. This is my intention. This is what I want to kind of future state of what you want your book to be. And then say, okay, now that I'm clear on that, I can reverse engineer to come back to the creation of what is the idea of this book in order to accomplish. It's what we do with our clients, like start with the end goal in mind, and let's reverse engineer and go back to what we need to do today. I know there's different strategies for different types of books. You can give books for credibility or authorship, or for those that are used for like networking and getting your foot in the door, for lead gen or building your business. Can you speak to some of the different types of strategies for the right book for the right potential author?
Yeah, I'll just try to give you a couple of quick examples. I think that'll really illustrate the point. One really great example, we had a client some years back who had been doing workshops, weekend workshops, these sort of intensives, retreats, very successful, had great content, really great feedback, had built a nice business, but she wanted to get on bigger stages. She wanted to be a professional speaker as opposed to a workshop leader. So she wanted to get paid to be speaking.
Sure.
And so she thought, I'll write a book, which absolutely, in that particular case, that's a great move. Getting on more stages, getting on bigger stages, being out there as a speaker, that is absolutely one goal that a book can really support very well. So great idea to write the book. But what she wrote was essentially a workbook based out of the workshops that she had been teaching. So she had this incredibly rich, really prescriptive, hands-on kind of a workbook that mimicked the work people did in her workshops. But when she was sending it out to event leaders, she wasn't really getting any response. So when she came to us, thought what she needed was marketing. But unfortunately, through the conversation, I had to explain to her that in fact she had written the wrong book for her.
And you've written the wrong book.
Because what was happening was she was sending to event hosts trying to present herself as a keynote speaker, right? Which is usually that person who's up on the stage for like 30, 40 minutes at the beginning or end of the event, giving some kind of inspirational talk. And she was giving them a book that was a nuts and bolt workbook.
Like a how-to. Yeah.
Exactly. And the people she was sending it to, they couldn't bridge those two things. They couldn't see how what she was doing in the book was going to play out on a big stage. There was a disconnect. So we helped her to understand that. And then she went back and she took some of the stuff from that book and she changed it and she turned it into a slightly different kind of book, published that, immediately saw much better results.
Okay. Got it.
That's one really good example. Similar example, we have a gentleman, again, many years ago, who was very well credentialed in the corporate space, had been an entrepreneur, had been a venture capitalist, had been in, different C-suite positions, had now switched, wanted to do executive coaching. He had left all that behind to do his own thing, decided to write a book. Again, everyone says you're launching a business, write a book. So he came to us to talk about his book. And in his case, what he had done was he had written a memoir. His thinking was, and again, not crazy.
Right.
His thinking was, well, if people are going to work with me, they should know my history and they should know my background. And they should know who I am and what I have to offer. And so he wrote a memoir. But what we explained to him was that, first of all, the audience for memoirs and the audience for business books are two totally different audiences. There can be overlap, absolutely. But if you really want a book to bring you clients, you want a business book, not a memoir. The other thing he didn't really understand was that he could take those stories. And yes, absolutely, someone who wants to work with him wants to know about his expertise. They don't want to know about his childhood. They don't want to know about his experiences in high school. Right. They don't care about how he got his first job. They want to understand his experience, but only through the lens of what they really want, which is whatever it was he was going to be coaching them on, whatever his signature systems and ideas and principles were going to be. And in fact, some of the best self-help and business books out there do include a lot of stories. Mm-hmm. Having that aspect of personal stories is a really key part of the book. He just went with the wrong format overall.
I see. Got it. That was going to be one of my questions, because I know there's, a how-to book or a memoir, and I'm sure there's others. And maybe this is a myth or my own misunderstanding or belief. I've not written a book, disclosure. I'm thinking about it. That's why I'm talking to Ally here. But I sometimes think generally when people hear book, they think story. But then in the business world, they hear book, they think how to, right? More on the nuts and bolts and everything else. But there's an element that is, I believe, and I'd love to hear your expert opinion, that a really well-written content book weaves in stories, weaves in the kind of personal reflections and experiences to make it more real, to make it more come to life, as opposed to do this and then do this. It kind of it blends the two together. How do you see that combination working? And then another kind of add-on question is, what about a parable? What's your feeling about that? And I know that for our audience, as an example, business owners, one of the best known books, I think, is The E-Myth, right? Which is a parable. Everybody knows the e-book, right? The baker, the operator, or whatever the different, namings are. How do you kind of weave in story with content to make it feel like it's a really nice book to read, but it also kind of checks some of the boxes on the nuts and bolts, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. So this question really goes back to what we were saying about having the end goal in mind. The kind of book that you write very much needs to be dictated by who you want to reach with it, and then beyond them, what it is you want the book to do. Who are you reaching in order to achieve whatever goal it is you want to achieve? Yes, you're absolutely right. Like I said, some of the best self-help books that have ever been written include stories. I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. I think any book has some element of storytelling. Mm-hmm. Every type of book has some element of storytelling, because storytelling is how humans communicate. It's our natural medium for understanding ideas and sharing ideas. Even a very, very prescriptive workbook is probably going to have at least some stories, even if those stories are simply illustrative of a point, right? Like you see often in a self-help book that the author will try to explain a concept. They'll tell you, okay, well, if you do this thing, then this result happens. And then they'll share a client story. Oh, I had this client and I taught them this thing and they went through this and then they got this result, right? That's the most basic form of a story that you might see in more prescriptive type books, business books, self-help books. And I think that's where authors get confused, is because they do understand instinctively that their story matters, and it does.
Yeah.
But but they confuse the story being the primary thrust of the book with what the primary thrust of the book actually needs to be from the reader's perspective, right? What are they coming to you to learn? What problem are they coming to you that they believe you have the solution for? And yes, tell your stories matter, but they're not coming to you for your stories. They're coming to you for the thing. So your stories have to serve the thing, not the other way around.
I see. I want to talk a little bit about like publishing and that side, but I want to stay on this aspect of the book writing, if you will. I'm kind of throwing in a question that I'm sure has been top of mind for you in the last, I'm sure you know where I'm going with this in terms of AI and how that's maybe shifted the landscape in terms of wannabe authors or people that are writing a book and what that means to them. I'd love to get your expert perspective and like, what have you seen shift the book writing landscape as it pertains to AI? Is it a positive? Is it a negative? Does it depend on how you use it? Like, what have you seen from your perspective and what do you think about how that's going to continue to be a trend if it is one in some way?
AI is absolutely the big conversation right now. I've probably been on a dozen webinars or conversations or panels over the last few months. In particular, everyone's like really excited about it. We just recently had a huge lawsuit. So Anthropic, which I believe is the company behind Claude, had a huge settlement. They were accused of having used a large number of pirated books to program their AI tool, and they admitted to this. Even other copyright questions aside, they specifically used a site that had pirated books to help program the tool. And so they've now decided to reach a settlement, and authors can go to this website and put their name or their title in and figure out if they were impacted. And if they were impacted, the settlements are going to go up to, I believe, as much as $3,000 per person to try to settle for having used the rights. So that just happened. We also have people, Amazon publishers are putting things into their contracts about disclosure. Did you use AI? If you did, what did you use it for? How much of it did you use? There was an anonymous story some months back about a publisher or an agent who put their client's book through one of those AI detector tools. And discovered that a large portion of it had been plagiarized accidentally because they had used AI to help them write the book. So because of things like that, we had a client who 100% did not use AI. She wrote the book entirely herself. And said, in fact, she was a little bit anti-AI. Amazon flagged her book and wouldn't publish it because they detected what they thought were some flags that made it look like it might have been by AI. So she had to go through a process and sign basically an affidavit stating that she was in fact the author of the book before they would publish. So there's a lot of like stuff going on. All of that said, it's not a trend. It's here to stay, right? AI, nobody's putting the genie back in the bottle. AI is here. So really the only question as we move forward becomes, how do we use it? What role does it really take in this process? And I think the way people are using AI in different industries is going to vary a lot. But when it comes to a creative process, we have seen a few really interesting things. A friend of mine who studies audiobooks recently did a study of over 100 different books on Audible that have been published using AI voice. It's been happening now for over a year. We have a good sample size. And universally, out of 100 books that were published using AI voice, the reviews were terrible, absolutely terrible. People hated them. We're also seeing a lot of protests and we're seeing a lot of things coming up, like there's a badge you can register for that you can put on your work that says 100% human created, no AI. So there are movements happening where we do see that the market, at least when it comes to creative work, so far consumers are very clear that they do not want creative work produced by AI.
Right.
So that may work for some creators who are taking a shortcut, but it's not working for the marketplace. They do not want it.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's so interesting from what you've shared with some of the examples. I mean, I think just AI in general, like you said, it's obviously not a trend. It's here to stay. I love the expression, the genie's out of the bottle, we can't put it back. But in terms of its use case in certain scenarios, and I think especially on the creative aspect, I mean, we're talking about writing a book and authorship and content, and also, it's applicable to musicians. I've heard discussions around that as well. It's fascinating what's developing, but at the same time, we don't really know how it's going to play out because it's still all fairly new. right? And I think that's the thing to take into consideration, that most of us in some way or another are utilizing AI as a way to help do what you might be doing. It might be to help do things more efficiently or more effectively, or help you strategize or brainstorm or research. That's fine. But when it comes to the creative process, honoring that, I firmly believe in this sense, like a book is your spoken word on paper. It's your written word. And even the thing that you mentioned about the audio, that's amazing, because I know there are some people I listen to audiobooks all the time where the audiobook is maybe not spoken by the author. It might be somebody that's, reading the book. And now like we have to make sure, like, who's that person? Is that AI? Is that a real person? I mean, it's probably tricky to navigate. Listener and watcher beware as this space continues to unfold. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of it has to do with the technology, right? Like, can I envision a future in which AI is so good that the voice does perfectly mimic a human voice, and we don't have that situation where people can tell anymore?
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure we're heading towards that. We're not there yet, but sure, that's going to happen. But right now, I think the most important thing for authors to understand when it comes to AI is the difference between AI-assistive tools and AI generative tools. Nobody has a problem with AI assistive tools, right? So that could be anything from a tool like Grammarly that helps you to clean up things, all the way to sitting down with ChatGPT and using it as a brainstorming partner, or having it help you outline chapters or outline a book, giving it a paragraph of yours and saying, I need to say this in half as many lines, help me trim this down. Nobody really has a problem with that. And in fact, I think that's the most interesting place, is how people are learning to use it so that they can create better content and create it faster. That's really cool to me. And I think we're going to see more and more training around that. It's important for authors to understand that piece. But the people who are going in and saying, write me a 40,000 word book on marketing, I promise you it's happening, because I've talked to these folks. That's not working. It's not only are we running into all of these potential legal problems like I was just describing, but also, at least again, right now, those books are not good.
Yeah.
They can fool you if you look at them very quickly, because the writing itself is polished. But when you actually read the drafts, you very quickly understand that they fall apart. There's no connective tissue. There's no cohesion. There's no thought put into the reader's journey. Nonfiction book almost always has some kind of transformative journey for the reader, whether changing your mind about something or literally teaching you to do something. None of that is happening in a draft that's written by AI. It's just not capable of it. So don't do that. Use it to help you. Don't let it do the work for you.
Yeah, I love the distinction between assisted AI to help develop thoughts, or to wordsmith, or, I use Grammarly all the time. I love it as an example. But the generative AI to say, write me this book, or, here's my website and write a book for me. Like, the message that I'm getting is that the human reader is going to be able to read through that and distinguish between the two. And so author beware as we continue to navigate this space. I want to shift gears, just talk a little bit about the publishing realm. Really appreciate your background, because as you said, you started out in the traditional publishing world, right? Simon Schuster, the Big Five, etc. And for many of us, the idea of writing a book was like, write it on the typewriter, then write it on the computer. And then you take this thing, your job is to shop it around to publishers. That was the avenue to get a book published. And then they would do the necessary work to market and sell the book and do everything else. It's completely different now. I think especially for entrepreneurs to some extent, business owners, the pendulum has shifted, because there's the self-publishing route. And then I think through the self-publishing route, it opens up this whole other avenue in terms of marketing and visibility and lead generation. How does it fit into my sales funnel as an extent? So what have you seen that has been the transition from old to the new? And what do you think is working now? Or what are some things that our audience could keep in mind as they are considering self-published, traditional publishing? Is it come back to the right book, the right idea? But what's your thought with that?
The first thing is, I can't take credit for this. It was someone else pointed it out to me recently. Can't even remember who it was, but somebody who's a thought leader in the space recently made the comment that it's like we've gone full circle. In the very early days of book publishing, all there was self-publishing, right? Charles Dickens famously self-funded his own novels, because that's what you did back then.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about that, and back in the day, yeah, you're right.
We've kind of come full circle. We started off in this world where if you had something that you really believed was of value to enough people, you invested in yourself, you printed up the book, and you went and you tried to sell it. Then we evolved, and publishers grew, and publishers got bigger and smaller and ate each other up. And, we ended up with this varied multi-publisher space. And now it's swinging back in that direction again. Now we see more and more people are yet again self-funding their own publishing project. I think it's a really fascinating thing. I think it's a really interesting thing to watch happen. And I know that some authors get discouraged, but for me, I think it's very exciting. Traditional publishing is still a really valid and a really great avenue for the right person. And yes, absolutely, it does always come back to strategy. At least for me, I think everything is about strategy. For certain people, for example, if you already have a pretty well-established business or platform, but it's small within your niche or small within your region, and you want to be national, you want to be mainstream, a traditional publisher can make that happen for you. They have the connections to mainstream media. They have the connections to get you into Costco and Barnes and Noble and all of these different places offline, right? Traditional publishers can make that happen. On the other hand, if you're an entrepreneur and a business owner, an expert, coach, speaker, whatever, for you, writing a book most of the time isn't about getting national visibility. It isn't about trying to get on all the big radio shows and TV shows. Everyone would love to have that happen, of course. I mean, that would be great. But it's not really the same business. And I think that when people get sad, like, oh, well, traditional publishing, to me, they're the major leagues. It's the top 1%. It's the Olympics. There's no reason to be sad about it. Not everybody is good enough to get to the Olympics.
Right.
It's okay. But there are still millions of incredibly talented athletes that find other avenues to express. And I think that self-publishing is the same way. Traditional is reserved for the very top 1%, people who are already at a certain level, who already have a certain level of visibility, a certain size mailing list, a certain size social following, etc. And people who have ideas that are more acceptable to a very large mainstream audience. But when you have a business, unlike a publisher, you're not in the business of selling books. You don't make money by selling books. So you don't need to have a book that appeals to everyone. You don't need to get on Oprah. You don't need to get on NPR, right? You don't need to get on these big stages. What you need is a book that's dialed into your business and your offers and your goals so that you can then leverage that book to sell more of the thing you sell.
Exactly.
Not more books.
I love that. I think this is such a good distinction because I still see it a lot today where people have the intention of writing a book. Like, I want to be a New York Times bestseller. I want to get published by whatever the name. Unless you're an Olympian, that's going to be really hard to crack. I'm not saying you can't do it, but also think about what your strategy is. If you're a business owner / entrepreneur, which means you're a marketer first, you have to think about how can I use this book as part of my overall sales and marketing strategy to generate leads, to generate more interest into your other products and services and offerings. And I think the other thing, I'm sure you would agree, and maybe you could share a little bit about this as well, is that when it comes to the creation of the book and your self-publishing, it's so much more about the marketing. Like, the book is one thing, but then the marketing is everything else. And people think, I want to sell more books. No, you don't. You actually don't. I mean, you could give your book away for free if it's going to lead to, say, your high ticket offer, and you have more people that are knocking at your door because they read the book, which you gave away for free plus shipping. And then you've got people that are now on your email list or following you on social that are now engaged in your programs and offerings that might want to take the next step with you. So that's probably another myth, that it's actually more about the marketing than it is about the writing. Would you agree with that to some extent?
I mean, I think they're pretty intimately intertwined, right? Because like the writing has to deliver, obviously. But yeah, absolutely, it's true. And that's where that big difference is. I've had clients who decided to self-publish because they had a book deal on their last book. And they were frustrated because the publisher really hamstrung their marketing efforts. They wouldn't let them give away thousands of books. They wouldn't let them chop the book up into social posts, right? There were a lot of things I didn't want them to do because it cannibalized their business, which again is selling books. When you self-publish and you are trying to sell something else, it's a totally different ballgame. I mean, I always tell people, like, it's a given. We all want to sell books, right? You write a book, you publish a book. Of course you want to sell books. That's not the goal, though.
Yeah.
Would you rather sell 100 copies of a book where you're going to make maybe $2, $3 of profit on a book?
Yeah.
Or would you rather give away 1,000 books and sell one $10,000 coaching package?
Yeah. That's the key right there. I think for our listeners to really embrace that there's the authorship, there's the creation of the book with the strategy in mind, the right book versus the wrong book. Not to mention, not every entrepreneur needs to write a book, but then there's the part of like, how is it really dialed into your overall business strategy from a marketing and sales and growth perspective? That's really, really important for our audience to listen to. So thank you for sharing not just that perspective, but everything else we talked about. Writing the book, the right book, AI a little bit. It was fascinating.
If you're out there and you have a business and you've published a book and you're you're out there sweating, trying to sell one copy of a book at a time, you're missing out on so much more that book could be doing for you.
Yeah, perfectly said. I'm sure there are people watching, listening to this, be like, okay, I need to reach out to Ally, need to find out more. How can I get some of her wisdom and insight? Tell us a little bit about what you do with your clients, where people can find you, how they can contact you. I'd love to have that as a resource for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are an author services company. We're not a hybrid publisher. We're not a traditional publisher. If you are publishing a book, you are the publisher. We are your outsourced publishing team. So we help you to develop the book. So all of these things we're talking about, we're going to make sure all of these things are happening in your draft. We're going to talk to you about what your goals are, what your business is, how you're trying to grow it, how the book fits into that picture. If you're not clear, we're going to help you get clear. And then we're going to make sure that the draft that you've written is actually achieving the goals that you say that you want to achieve. So that, again, we don't have just a good book, we have a marketable book, and we have a book that's strategically positioned to be leveraged in the way that you need it to be leveraged. We take that all the way on through to publication, design, production, and book marketing.
Wow.
And I have something I would love to offer your audience. So I have this evergreen webinar training called Don't Write the Wrong Book.
Okay, perfect.
It's about 45 minutes. It's all about the stuff that we've been talking about. What does it mean to write the right book? How do you avoid writing the wrong book? And then I take them through a simple 5-step process for how to really think about which idea of the many that are probably swirling in their heads is really going to be the right book for their goals right now. And they can get that at offers.thewritersally.com/COO Solution.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, I love that. Thinking like a marketer. Wonderful. And we'll include that link specifically in the show notes as well. And I think this was a great conversation to highlight some of the things for people to think about if you're writing a book, if you're considering or have written a book. And I think doing a little bit of a deeper dive with your guidance and expertise with that webinar would be a great start in order to explore a little bit more in detail of what are the things to keep in mind and some of the concerns you're considering moving forward. So thank you so much, Ally, for being here. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate you sharing your zone of genius with our audience. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Great. Thank you. And that's a wrap on this episode of the COO Solution Podcast. If you found today's conversation valuable, I'd love it if you could subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to get control of their business and scale it with a second in command that they trust to handle all the daily tasks and operations they don't enjoy. And hey, maybe you're wondering if now is the time to bring on a trusted fractional COO or Chief Operating Officer to help your thriving business scale with clarity and confidence. If you're tired of doing it alone, visit thecoosolution.com and take our free quiz to help determine if now is the right time to bring a fractional COO to help you scale. In just 25 questions, you'll get a personalized report that helps you decide if your business is ready for the game-changing support of a part-time fractional COO. Let's find out together if it's your next step. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, let's roll up our sleeves and get to work.